Well, this is video number two. Uh, got this to do. So, uh, I want to talk specifically about some things that I've been told about telling the truth about being sexually abused and admitting it and naming people. And that's something that I think we all struggle with. Uh, and I want to talk specifically about what I heard from my mom and my dad and my family members, and even from my community and from my people. I'm First Nations. As First Nations people, we hold our mothers in high regard, and our respect for our women is rooted in our culture, and it's a great part of our culture, and it's important because our culture was a patriarchal culture. Men ran things pretty much. We had power and we had authority. And I think we were wise, very wise, to place in the center of our culture, in the center of our hearts, and to teach our children, both boys and girls, to hold women in high regard and to respect them a great deal and to love them with our actions and to battle for them. Because if we're going to wield authority, we better have a great amount of respect for those we wield authority over. If you're going to be a leader, you have to respect the role of other people and what other people are. And that's something that's core to my culture. And as a First Nations man, I am very proud of that. And I hold that in high regard. And I would never want to do anything that disrespects the role of my mom or to disrespect my mother uh, or to somehow or another make it look like holding women in high regard uh, is a problem or that I don't agree with that. My mother is my mother. I loved her to the day she died, and I had always hoped that we could have this conversation. But I was a young man. I had a lot of things to deal with, and I was a single dad. My mother's daughter, uh, my older sister, was actively targeting my children uh, in front of everybody to the point that I had to call the state troopers. Uh, and I was dealing with that. I was dealing with divorces and being a single dad. Uh, and I was just dealing with being a young man trying to make sense of all of this. So I never got to say a lot of things to my mom that I wish I could have. In many ways, I was angry and understandably so, and I was just unaware of what I needed to know. One of the things that I wish I could have said to her and laid out for her uh, is the simple fact that, first off, that what I'm saying is true. Uh, People can say a lot of things about what happened to me. They could look at it a lot of different ways. They could talk about historical trauma. They could talk about the role of the church and their role in our culture and the role of the churches and the federal government and the state governments that westernized us, uh, sending their pedophiles out to the frontiers as partial as punishment for their abusive tactics uh, and abusive behaviors, but also as a way to get rid of uh, problem people out of your people and send them out to the frontier to get rid of them. And maybe at least they could do some good for those savages. That was my mother and my grandmother and my uncles and my aunties. And then those people uh, came here and raped people uh, for years, on top of all the other atrocities. Uh, and people could look at that, and I do. Since I'm Christian, but I, uh, catch me following a priest. Uh, you know, I'm suspicious of any outfit that does that to anyone ever. And don't let us talk about it. And don't have a word to say to me or judge my mom. So uh, we could look at it that way. Uh, I could look at it and hate my parents and hate my people because the truth is, uh, it happened. I was sexually abused and literally walked around my village bleeding and crying at 2 years old, at 3 years old, at 4 years old, until I learned to stop walking around my village crying naked and bleeding because people told me to shut the hell up. People never said a word to my grandma who was doing that to me. And that's true. And out of that, as a young man, I was in foster care, and my mom told me that I can't talk to counselors. And I want to talk about that. And I want to talk about the attitude that she had, that she learned, and the attitude of my people. Drink some coffee. It's morning time. I'm drinking my coffee. So, what my mom basically said was that I can't talk about this because I'm shaming her and I'm shaming my grandmother, Lydia Simon, just so my relatives will know, that say what you want. It's out there now, and I ain't gonna hide it. Anyways, that's what happened. And my mom said that I shame my people when I talk to counselors. She said I shame her. And she said, what kind of a man shames his mom? And that's a fair question. And I guess if we look at things the way we always did, that's the end of it. But this is what I learned. It took me a long time. That when I am told that I could not tell the truth about what happened, about what's real, because it shames my mom, then what she's really saying is that the truth, be it spoken by me or anyone, the truth shames her. And that if I say it and other people hear it and they believe it because it's true and they all seen it, then they will shame her. And that's the outcome of me ever telling the truth. And she's saying the truth shames her, and she's truly ashamed of herself. And when society looks at me and says, Ray, your mom is right, don't ever say anything about your mom. They're saying, Ray, if you ever tell the truth about your mom, we are going to shame her and we're going to be ashamed of her. And that's what's being said. That's the truth we refuse to admit. And what does that leave me? I love my mom. My mom is my mom. That's the only mom I have. I don't get a second one. It's the one God gave me to. And I love my mom. But when I say I'll be silent because I don't want to shame you, I'm saying I'll be silent because the truth I know, the truth of what you did to me, the truth of who and what I am is a shame to you. The hardest part of my life, I think, has been trying to be my mother's son, trying to love my mom and not be ashamed of her in a world that continuously shamed her, trying to love my grandmother who didn't just maul me, but also taught me to be the man that I am today, who spoke to me, whose husband, my grandfather, who also remained silent, taught me a great many things. I learned to be a man amongst them, but I also learned to be a man as a sexually abused man, as a survivor. And I try to love people and do right by people, but I could never tell my story. I could never, ever show my true self to any of them because when I did, I shamed them. That's why, from the beginning, my mom and then my family members been trying to get me to kill myself because I can't hide my feelings. I can't stop knowing the truth. Somebody abuses me, I'm gonna hurt. If somebody abuses me and say they love me, I'm gonna talk to them about what they did to me. Because if I abuse somebody and I love them, I'll tell them, oh, I hurt you. Talk to me about it. I didn't mean to. Never wanted to be ashamed of my mom, and I never felt right being ashamed of her. It always felt wrong to me. And no matter what she did, no matter what it ended up to be, knowing everything I know about the world and about psychology and counseling and screwy crap, I know my mom never sat out and said, oh, there's a baby, I'm going to abuse him and kill him. She just had a baby that triggered her, that woke up in her and in his grandmother, probably in his people, something that they're scared of. It's probably because from day one, this is what I believe and this is what I struggle with. Anybody that thinks that they're going to bring shame to their family so they don't talk, I'll tell you this, you're making yourself your family's shame. When our families tell us we can't speak, and when my people, it's like Anna Frank, when you tell me I can't speak because it brings shame to my people, you're telling me you're ashamed of my people, and you're telling me to bear it. You're telling me my very existence, the truth of my life, brings shame to my people. And while I could bear that, while I've been able to carry that for 50 years, while I've been able to walk out your lives for 50 years, my oldest son, joy of my life, my sexually abused boy, he couldn't walk it out. He died in it. He shot himself in it. was well known as a dedicated dad, as a good dad. I quit drinking when I was 22. I haven't drank to this day. It's the dad I was. I quit when I found out Darren was going to be born. 4 generations. Alcohol, alcohol, alcohol. It stuck with me. My poor son, he picked it up. Just prayed for him and fought for him. I knew what was in that bottle for him, you know. I almost lost my life in that bottle. I came so close. When I found out he was going to be born, I knew I wasn't allowed to kill myself because I wouldn't kill my kid's dad. And I knew I wasn't allowed to drink because I knew what comes with it. Out of the darkness I walked. I'm proud of that. And I did that on behalf of my kids. I don't mean to shame my people. I would say if my people have anything to be ashamed of, it's this, that you remain silent. It's that. And I would say that until I came along and started pointing this out and telling you the truth about what you guys are doing and what's going on, you could claim to be innocent and ignorant of that truth. But now when I speak it, you can't claim to be innocent. And I think that's why you fucking hate me. I think that's why my mom wanted me to die. That's why my sisters want me to die. Literally. That's a shameful thing, in my opinion. And people could say they don't know, but they know. People could turn a blind eye and ignore things. But one day, people are going to look back on the day that they told me that if I ever admitted that my son was sexually abused or that he shot himself, if I wouldn't shut up about that I could never see my grandkids, and to carry that out and force me to leave my grandkids or ignore the fact that my kids were sexually abused, that he shot himself. Or I could sit there and, I don't know, be silent about everything and pretend to be a good grandpa and shame my son and shame myself and shame my people, shame my daughter-in-law and shame my grandchildren, shame everybody just like everybody else is doing. I think it's a crying shame. I think it's a crying shame that Dr. Reverend Anna Frank, Episcopalian Reverend, had honorary doctorates out of the University of Alaska Fairbanks, that Dr. Trimble Gilbert, first chief, traditional chief of the interior, Reverend, also. I think it's a crying shame that those two doctorates out of the University of Alaska Fairbanks could not find a simple truth of what they sentenced me to and my mom to and themselves when they demand silence to hide shame. I think that's a shame. I think it's a crying shame that in 2017 I went to these people and begged them for help with my son Darren. And they told me it wasn't time yet to confront sexual abuse. They treated me like trash. It didn't do anything. I think that's a crying shame. And I think if they don't listen to me, they could just live in their shame. I think it's a crying shame that Chief Steve Guinness of Fairbanks Native Association, the board of directors which I served on, that Chief Brian Ridley of Canada Chiefs Conference, what is it, couple $100 million a year? Or is it 500 million? Over 500 employees providing social services to Alaskan Native villages and tribal members in interior of Alaska. Chief Victor Joseph, past president of Tanana Chiefs Conference. I think it's a crying shame that Ethan Shute and the entire board of Tanana Chiefs Conference, I mean of Doi Unlimited, that all our native leaders have remained silent. Say what you want about me. You could hate me, you could say I'm a liar, you could say that I'm crazy, I'm evil, you could repeat my mom's lies about me, which I dare you to. That's a bloody story. That's bloody. Oh, that's bloody. If you think I don't know who was talking to my son Darren at Iffy Cochrane, and those stories will come out the way I want them to. I'll try to be nice about it. But none of that shit is going to change the truth. Herbert James Alvonica over on Pheasant Drive, living 2 doors down from Eileen Roberts, Antoinette Nejeu Roberts, mom, step-grandmother to my children, and stepmom to my children, Darren and Lee. Herbert lives 2 doors down, and he did, in fact, anally and orally rape my sons when they were little boys. Antoinette and Eileen did know what was going on, and they didn't tell me, they didn't warn me, and they sent my kids to play with Herbert in the woods. That's what they did. And you could hate me any way you want, but that's what happened. And no one could deny that. And at the end of the day, I've been asking for help with my kids for years. I went to all of these people and asked them for help. And they all know what happened. Everybody knows what happened to my kids. They don't say that I lie about that. They just refuse to do anything. I made police reports. And that's a shame. That's just shameful truth. I feel like crap. I'm my son's dad. Not only did I not protect him from these people, I couldn't even talk to him when it happened. He had nowhere to go. And the world kept yelling at him, telling the truth will shame your dad. And maybe a lot of people did look at me and shame me for the fact that I failed to protect my children. Say, I'm not ashamed. What the hell else could I have done? You guys know what happened. I was your friend. I was your brother. Darren was your nephew. You guys loved him. You guys loved me. You guys respected us. Herbert never even missed a day of work. I don't even think he ever talked to the cops yet. I don't know anything. I asked Anna Frank to tell Herbert to get his friends and for her to get her church friends and her native friends and sit down with me and Herbert and talk to us and let me talk to Herbert about this, about the fact that I knew he was sexually abused. And Anna Frank shut that down. Told Herbert, don't talk to me anymore. They're going to do an investigation. What did you find in that investigation? What came out of it? Has anything changed? That's a shame. That's shameful behavior. What can I say? And if you're mad at me, then ask yourself why you're mad at me for saying the truth. And if you're a reverend, I name you because I'm Christian. Jesus says, you got an issue with someone, tell him. Well, I told you guys I had an issue. It was hard to love my mom, and it's hard to love my people because I'm hearing the same crap and I'm seeing the same outcome. Does it feel shameful to talk about it? Heck yeah, it does. It does. Does it feel shameful to talk about my son? Yeah, it does. Not only the fact that he was sexually abused, but that he turned around and did that to his little brother when he was 13 or 14. And all those people that hated Herbert, my son ended up exactly in those shoes. And you think I'm ashamed of my son? It's an outcome of it. It's an outcome of him being sexually abused. That's an outcome. That's what our families deal with. That's what happens. It happens a lot. And I'm not ashamed of him. You know, the greatest gift God ever gave me is that He told me to forgive Herbert for raping my sons. And through it all, I never advocated for punishment of Herbert. I've only advocated for Herbert to sit down and talk to me, for my native people and my native leaders, those who have authority because they have doctorates and reverend titles, because they run multi-million-dollar companies, because they're in DC, because they have a mic and they speak and people hear and listen, because they're our leaders and they put themselves there. All I've ever advocated was for us to have an honest conversation about these important issues. I never knew about my son Darren and his younger brother. I found out 3 months before he shot himself, and I had to talk to my son about it. And he couldn't talk to me about what happened to him. The best I got was a message telling me what happened and why he did it. And you know what he said? He said exactly what I said. He said, when I was 18 years old and I was walking around with my little daughter and I seen Herbert, I said hi and I felt funny. And when he said hi to my daughter, I wanted to kill him and I hated him. He said, when I was a little kid and he was jacking off on us and doing weird stuff in the bedroom, it was just weird things he did. And I was just kind of like, but a sick person or whatever. But when we were outside in the woods, he started telling us we have to suck his dick and to put it in our mouth. He said I was the oldest, so I figured I had to do it. He said when I was 13, I started thinking, why did Herbert do that? He said it didn't bother me at all. He said I just thought about why did he do that? What was that about? He said it never bothered me. He said I decided I would try it out. So I got my little brother. And that's how it goes. He says when I was 18, he tried to shake my daughter's hand. I hated him. And I hated him ever since. I want to kill him. I want to shoot him in the head with my 9mm. He said, when I realized what I did to my brother, I wanted to shoot myself too. Hated myself. And I was his dad. When I didn't know about William. But God told me, forgive her. And I had to sit down in front of my sons and tell them, I'm sorry I'm not killing Herbert. I'm your dad and I love you. I'm sorry I'm not hurting him, and I'm sorry I'm not breaking his world. I wish God would let me be evil so I could stake him out on the ground naked, build a fire on his stomach, birch bark and spruce twigs, cut him up, cook him over that fire and watch him eat himself. I could spend days breaking that man. Broke my heart when I learned about that. I'm sorry I'm not doing any of that. I'm sorry I'm peaceful. Hate it in my heart, but I know it's right because God says forgive. See, God tells me Herbert is a man like me, sexually abused like me, and he has those hard memories like me. He tells me, Herbert, doesn't deserve your hate. It deserves your understanding because nobody in Herbert's world is saying, Herbert, you are a child of God. You have every right to tell your story, and I'm here to hear it, and I'm here to help you work through it. Because as much as it hurts, I know that it's only through helping you that I can help my sons and undo the hurt you did to them. I told my sons, I have hope in this. Herbert is a warrior. He's just a wounded man. At least he deserves a chance to redeem himself. And us native people, us native men, we owe him that. I talked to my son Darren a lot about that because even though I'm Christian, rape my kids, I'm flesh and blood. I have a flesh and blood mind too. A part of me can really enjoy violence. I can relish it, dance in it. Depends on what I want to listen to, I guess. That's what I would have told Darren if I knew about William sooner. All those people that stood in front of Darren and hated Herbert on his behalf, I want you to know that you are hating him in his own mind. God is good to me. I don't know how I would live with myself if I looked at my son and said I should kill Herbert, or if I went out there and built a fire on Herbert's stomach like I wanted to, amongst other things. I'm glad my son didn't see that, considering the path he walked and the mistakes he made. Saved me from a terrible future. It was a hard day to learn that my kids were sexually abused. And yes, I dealt with shame. But I, as a father, did my damnedest. And like it or not, my children are raised in a society and in a culture that to this day wouldn't acknowledge the fact that both men and women are sexually abusing our children and us. And they're refusing to react to it. They're refusing to do anything about it. That's the society I raised my kids in. And if my life is anything, it is simply this. I oppose that bullshit. I don't bring shame to anyone. I expose shame. And I do it by speaking the truth that if anyone else had the courage to speak, would also bring the exact same shame. That's all I do. No one, no one should ever tell me that I shouldn't talk about what happened to my son or what happened to me for any reason. And we all know that. And I've always known that my people are wrong to tell me I bring shame, and they are wrong to hide their shame behind the silence of their sexual abuse victims. I would say it to your face if you listened to me, redeemed yourself, or my son shot himself in your silence. But you don't want to talk to me, and you shame me. You tell me I can't see my grandkids because admitting the truth is going to hurt them. It's going to take an act of God to shut me out. And ain't none of you an act of God in my life. A little bit of anger today, a lot of grief. I miss my son. In many ways, I wish I'd done this when he was still alive. But I didn't want to talk bad about his stepmom and his stepgrandma, the mother of my children. I have two kids with her. One of them who was raped by his stepbrother, my other son. Yes, there was a lot of reasons for people to ask me to be silent. And if I have a regret, it's that it took me so long to learn these things and to see the truth. You know, they say I can't talk about my son. They tell William, me and Naju's son, you're okay, you're okay, you're okay, you're okay. Sexual abuse, you're healed from it. Doesn't bother you. You're okay, you're okay, you're okay. You know, when his mom tells me, you're shaming me when you tell me the truth, you're shaming me. When she says that, and he says, yeah, you're shaming my mom. And everybody looks at me and says, yeah, you're shaming his mom. I say this, his mom's got her issues too. And if the truth I speak and the reality of what happened, if I speak the truth shames his mom in your eyes and in his eyes and in her eyes, then the truth shames her and she is truly ashamed. And the fact that I point that out is not a problem. It's not the problem because I don't create shame in her nor in him. And all those people that are supporting my kids in being silent, that's what you guys are doing to my family. That's what you're doing to my kids. When you guys are supporting my son's widow and forcing me to leave and not be around my grandkids, when you're doing that, you guys are supporting that. And you guys are locking them into that, just like you did to my son. You're okay, you're okay, you're okay, you're okay. If he was so okay, why was he drinking so much? If he was so okay, why was he fucking around on his wife? Was his wife in the next room? If he was okay, why was he crying and saying he wants to kill himself? Why didn't anybody tell me He was trying to kill himself repeatedly. When is he not okay? And people telling those young people, you're okay, you're okay. We talked about it. It's fine. You're okay, you're okay. And when they suffer with it, say, you're blaming your parents, you're blaming, you're blaming. I hate to tell you this. It's well established fact. Sexual abuse creates an issue of promiscuity in adults. I'm not going to even get into the psychobabble behind the tangling up of love and sex, intimacy and sex that happens when people who love them have sex with them when they're 4 or 5 years old. But he's told he's okay, he's okay, he's okay. He wasn't okay. Neither was I. And that's the truth. And while the truth is that I'm the only one that could make a choice to change, when the cost of changing is my grandchildren and my children, I really don't want to change. How am I going to heal if I'm told to be ashamed of my mother and my people and my family? How am I going to heal when my mom and my sisters are trying to get me to kill myself from 5 years on? I wonder what people think Darren saw when he looked out at the world, realizing that, like his dad, he fucked around on his wife. And he looked back mere 3, 4 years ago when everybody, him included, excused my wife telling me to kill myself for fucking around on her. Everybody excusing, if you love me, you'll prove it. And that's his mom. And that's what everybody approve of. And everybody says, of course, Ray, expect it. Darren, condemn your dad with us. And that poor man, mere years down the road, is in my shoes. What do you think he was going through? I don't blame him. But we like to talk like it's no big deal to do these kinds of stuff, to ignore the sexual abuse of our kids, to ignore the lies, ignore the cost of silence. It's an expensive choice, and there's no way out of it short of these honest conversations. Don't mean to be angry. I certainly don't want to shame people. But if anything I say shames people, I guess I'm just stuck with that. Tomorrow, or later, whenever, I'll speak to my family more directly and about family issues, about what we do to each other throughout this process. Because there's a lot of this that we don't look at. There's a lot of truth we ignore. There's a lot of things we're confused about.